All right, Liz Wheeler Show, episode 418. Take one. This is a bit of a continuation from a conversation we were having last week where I was talking about finding it interesting when people change their minds, when intellectual people of good faith, politically change their minds on things. This is not something that I've changed my mind on per se. I've just gotten more extreme, for lack of a better phrase here. I used to think public schools could be saved if they could be reformed. Now I think that they should just be abolished. And I know even the conservative movement, the Republican Party, haven't quite caught up to my opinion yet, but you'll get there. You'll get there. In my book that's coming out in 3 weeks, guys, 3 weeks. If you haven't gotten your copy, go to hideyourchildrenbook.com. Get your copy now. It will be here before you know it. In my book, I talk about this self-avowed Marxist named Emily Drabinski. Maybe you've heard of her, maybe you haven't. Emily Drabinski is the president of the American Library Association, which is a self-explanatory position. She's in charge of libraries across the country. She has incredible influence on what kind of books are on the shelves, what kind of events are hosted at public libraries. States and libraries across the country are members of the American Library Association. Emily Drabinski, I am not calling her a Marxist as some kind of ad hominem attack. She is a self-described Marxist. This is one of the things that I do in my book is I name the names of the actual Marxists behind the assault on America's kids. Emily Drabinski is an interesting character that we discuss in my book because Emily Drabinski is a big proponent of putting inappropriate books in the children's sections of public libraries and school libraries. You know, the kind of books that the left claims that we are banning books when we don't want outright pornographic books being shown to our elementary school children, when we don't want critical race theory being indoctrinated through books into our toddlers and kindergartners and preschoolers. Emily Drabinski wants both of those things to happen. Well, Emily Drabinski was caught on undercover camera at a recent socialist convention. Yes, you heard that correctly. A socialist convention advocating for both libraries and public schools to be used as sites of, quote, socialist organizing. Karlin Borisenko caught Emily Drabinski making these comments publicly, recorded her on an undercover camera, and this is the video. Take a look.
So this camera will be followed by the camera in the green, followed by the camera here.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm a librarian. I just wanted to say thank you so much. I just want to say thank you for bringing up libraries and classroom libraries, but also school libraries of all kinds, public libraries and higher education libraries who have been under attack in similar ways. But I think your point that public education needs to be a site of socialist organizing, I think libraries really do too. And I haven't seen that for the teachers that are working in libraries, but I think there's a real opportunity here to both connect what's happening in public education, what's happening in libraries, but also we need some help in the libraries. We need to be on the agenda of socialist organizing. So I just want to get up and say that. So thank you.
Yeah. I just want to thank you for your incredible work and for you stick your neck out and then fight at a difficult time. It's an inspiration to me.
Let me repeat what Emily Drabinski said. She said that libraries, and public schools need to be sites of socialist organizing. So when your child is at a public school, when your grandchild goes to the public library, this woman, the president of the American Library Association, wants that public library, public school to be a site of socialist organizing. And this, of course, informs my evolution on whether public schools ought to be reformed or whether public schools ought to be abolished. And I think the more people that see videos like this, the more people are going to join me in my position that public schools cannot be saved. Public schools must be eliminated because they will always be a source of indoctrination. It just depends on what is being indoctrinated. But the public school system is so thoroughly captured by people like Emily Drabinski and others connected to her election, which I discuss and unravel in my book. You will be surprised, but not surprised, at a very prominent figure in American education who was a significant factor in getting Emily Drabinski elected to this position. So make sure you pick up a copy of my book, Hide Your Children, Exposing the Marxists Behind the Attack on America's Kids. You can go to hideyourchildrenbook.com to get your copy now. I know I've been promising you guys an unboxing video as soon as my books arrive. I don't know if you guys know this. I didn't know this until I wrote my first book, but authors don't get copies of their book a lot, like very far ahead of publication date. I'm just now waiting for my copies of my book to come in. I haven't held it in my hands yet. As soon as I do, I will let you know, but it'll just be a couple more weeks and you can hold it in your hands as well. So speaking of sheep, New York City public health officials, LOL, told residents of New York to mask up over the holiday weekend. And it's very interesting that they did this because this comes just at the time when Anthony Fauci was pushed into a corner on the efficacy of masks in the most hilarious video I think that's ever surfaced of Dr. Fauci. We're going to watch that in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about MyBookie. We've all been there before, right? A weekend trip to the casino canceled because real life came calling. We're responsible adults. Of course, that happens. Well, MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game. Dive into a truly realistic casino experience featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. Take advantage of weekly blackjack tournaments and a brand new collection of high-end games for a chance at real cash rewards. Your adventure at the MyBookie Casino begins today with a generous sign-up bonus if you use my promo code Wheeler. That's promo code Wheeler to secure yourself a sweet deposit bonus. And that's not all, because their revamped loyalty program ensures that you will be showered with rewards, including free spins, cashback offers, and a host of exclusive VIP perks. The more you play, the more you win. Play anytime, anywhere with the MyBookie Casino. That's MyBookie Casino, and you will get a generous sign-up bonus if you use my promo code Wheeler. That's promo code Wheeler at MyBookie Casino. Okay, so New York City recommended that residents of New York mask for Labor Day. This is from the Daily Mail. They write, New Yorkers are being told to consider masking up this Labor Day weekend due to concerns about rising COVID cases and 2 new variants. A spokesman for New York City's health department told thedailymail.com that wearing a mask may be a good idea in crowded indoor areas this weekend when people are expected to congregate in large groups for the holidays. But they also expressed that nothing about the guidance has changed and that the city currently has no plans to make masks compulsory. Well, I don't believe them. I don't believe that governments are not right on track to make masks compulsory, because 3 hospitals in the state of New York have imposed a mask mandate. This is the tricky thing about government now. As soon as people have their eyes opened to government overreaching, to government abusing their power and imposing mandates on us, they just use a workaround. They use what they call a public-private partnership, where they coerce private institutions like airlines or hospital systems into issuing these mandates. And the end is the same. People have to go to the hospital. Most people have to fly, especially for work or to visit ailing family members or just for quality of life. And so the government achieves its purpose through a private company. It's kind of like what the FBI did with Facebook and Twitter during the lead up to the lead up to the presidential election, when they stifled the Hunter Biden laptop story. The FBI said, "Oh, we didn't violate your First Amendment rights. We didn't cause anything to be censored." Well, not the FBI specifically wasn't hitting the button, but they were pressuring Facebook and Twitter to hit the censorship button. So potato, it's the same thing. That's exactly what's happening. In New York, this is from Syracuse.com, St. Joseph's Hospital Health Center has reimposed a mask mandate for all emergency patients and visitors as state health officials monitor an uptick in COVID-19 cases. The Syracuse Hospital joins Upstate's University and Community General Hospitals as the biggest central New York hospitals to require large-scale masking in the past several weeks. Upstate's masking requirement, announced August 17th, extends beyond emergency rooms to all clinical areas of its 2 hospitals. In addition, Oswego Hospital and Auburn Memorial Hospital have also reimposed mask mandates, according to their website. This is not good. This is heading along the trajectory that we saw in early 2020, when the government told us it was, just lock down, 2 weeks to slow the spread. Save granny by wearing a mask and social distancing for 14 days, and then it's back to normal. And it wasn't. Meanwhile, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the perennial liar, was asked, of all places, on CNN about masks and whether or not masks work. And I'm going to warn you before we play this video that there's a chance, if you're watching on YouTube right now, that you won't be able to see this part because YouTube, while they removed their COVID misinformation policy, they have instituted a workaround. Their workaround is that they have a medical misinformation policy now, which means that if I say anything that contradicts the World Health Organization, you know, the same World Health Organization that is controlled by communist China, if I contradict the World Health Organization, that constitutes medical misinformation. And of course, the World Health Organization embraces the same ridiculous views as Dr. Fauci. So the end is the same. We will not be able to speak freely on YouTube about important topics related to COVID-19. But of course, you can join us at rumble.com/Liz Wheeler to watch this video. I highly recommend you join us because this is the funniest video of Dr. Fauci that I think exists. Also, before we get to that video, it's worth noting that YouTube, of course, is owned by Google. That's the parent company of YouTube. And if you Google, this is speaking of misinformation and medical misinformation, if you Google, can men menstruate, this is what returns on a Google search. This is element number 3. If we could bring this up on the screen just to show people. Can men menstruate is the Google search, and the result is, quote, having a period is not a feminine thing, and people of all genders menstruate, including non-binary people, agender people, and even plenty of men. So the company that allows that to populate after you Google can men menstruate will not allow us to mock Dr. Fauci or to state the scientific fact on whether face masks are effective in preventing the spread of respiratory viruses like COVID-19. So again, go to rumble.com/Liz Wheeler because you got to watch this video. This is on CNN, and Dr. Fauci was asked a valid question, a question that should have been asked years ago. Of course, CNN didn't act with any journalistic integrity until it became convenient for them. This is what he was asked, and as you can see, he had no coherent answer, no comeback whatsoever. Take a look. That is the biggest load of nonsense that I've ever been delighted to watch. I've watched this multiple times now because Dr. Fauci is like a trapped rat. He doesn't know which way to turn. So he does two things. First, he refers to the studies that are referenced in this New York Times article. They non-randomized studies, which are not up to the scientific par of this Cochrane review, and flawed observational studies, also not up to the level of this Cochrane review. The Cochrane review is the gold standard because it takes, I think it was 74 studies, and does a meta-analysis of all of that data. That's basically the best kind of study that can be run because it takes into account the greatest number of people in the greatest number of situations, and it isn't isolated to small groups. Dr. Fauci was caught. He was smoked on masks, and he had absolutely no comeback. Now, I will post the link to both the New York Times article and the Cochrane review on lizwheeler.com/locals and on my Twitter account, x.com/Liz_Wheeler. Please join me. Hard copies, hand them out. What are people going to say? Oh, but Dr. Fauci said I should. Show them the science. Show them the science. And then maybe bring up this video of Dr. Fauci getting smoked, because who doesn't enjoy this? So there's new information about, or a new legal opinion that's floating about whether Trump can be removed from the ballot in specific states based on Section 3, the disqualification clause of the 14th Amendment. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to talk about bank on yourself. This is a question I often ask myself. Do you really control your retirement money? If you've got a 401k or an IRA or a similar retirement plan, the answer to that question is no. The government actually controls it. They decide how much you can borrow and when you must pay it back, and you'll owe taxes and penalties for taking money out too soon or waiting too long, even though it's your money. And thanks to our skyrocketing national debt and a Congress that continues to spend like a drunken sailor, who knows how much you'll have to pay in taxes during a retirement that could last 30 years, hopefully? Bank on yourself is a better way to grow and protect your hard-earned money. This retirement plan alternative has never had a losing year in over 160 years. You are in control. You get access to your money for any purpose with no questions asked, and without government penalties or restrictions on how much income you can take or when you can take it. Try doing that with a 401k or IRA. You can't. Bank on yourself is just a better way. Now you can get a free report with all the details on how the Bank on Yourself strategy adds guarantees, predictability, tax savings, and control to your financial plan. Just go to bankonyourself.com/Liz. That's bankonyourself.com/Liz. Liz. So we talked about this last week. We debunked this legal theory that has been floated by leftists and never Trumpers that claims that President Trump, regardless of having zero convictions of anything, they claim that he is nonetheless disqualified from the presidency because of the 14th Amendment, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the disqualification clause. This is what the disqualification clause is. I'm going to read it verbatim. Quote, "No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president or vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability." So this is what the left and never Trumpers on the quote unquote right are trying to use to prevent President Trump from even being allowed to be on the ballot in certain states. They're so afraid that he might win that they don't even want his name allowed on the ballot. And we talked last week about how this particular disqualification clause of the 14th Amendment was instituted after the Civil War to prevent members of the United States Congress who had defected to the Confederacy, and then after the Confederates lost the Civil War, from coming and trying to run the United States of America. It was specifically targeted towards that moment in our history. So the idea or the definition of the words insurrection and rebellion need to be understood in the way that they were intended at the time, because they were intended at the time to mean people who had actually taken up arms against the United States government, like Confederate soldiers who were fighting, shooting, killing Union soldiers because they wanted to break off from the United States. So that's the definition of insurrection or rebellion as understood by the lawmakers who passed this constitutional amendment at the time. The second thing we talked about last week was this argument has already been tried by radical leftists down in Georgia, ironically, again in Georgia, used this as a way to try to keep Marjorie Taylor Greene off the ballot before her reelection to Congress happened. And they got as far as this was taken to court, and a judge threw this out, saying Marjorie Taylor Greene had not taken part in any insurrection and this was invalid. And then the third thing we talked about is, I suppose, the most obvious, and that is President Trump did not take part in any insurrection. He did not try to rebel against the United States. He did not try to subvert the Constitution. He was trying to find constitutional remedies for a valid grievance that he had identified, being the 2020 election was extremely shady, swampy, and probably stolen. So on every level possible, this doesn't make sense. The left, however, doesn't want us to understand the full context of this. They're hoping we don't dive into the legal nitty-gritty, which is why I want to do that today. Hans von Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation, he's one of the nerdiest guys I know. Love the guy, have been friends with him for years. He spoke to Fox News about this legal history of the disqualification clause, and I found this fascinating, and I think you will too. This is what Hans von Spakovsky said. He said, in 1872, they, meaning Congress, passed the Amnesty Act, and it removed the Section 3 disqualification with certain exceptions, including anybody who had served in 2 of the Congresses just before the Civil War, and members of the military, for example, who had been in the Union Army and had served the Confederacy. In 1898, Congress passed a second Amnesty Act that completely got rid of all those exceptions. So Hans von Spakovsky says, so the disqualification clause, it's gone. It's not valid anymore. This is exactly the kind of nerdiness and legal breakdown that we need on the right, because we need to have the intellectual ammunition to respond, because this is what the left is trying to do. They're trying to unilaterally remove a candidate for president of the United States just because they don't like him from the ballot, subverting the will of the people in this political candidate's party by going just to a Secretary of State in a swing state, for example, and having that Secretary of State unilaterally remove the name of that candidate from the ballot. I mean, it's ironic that the left is always talking about democracy being under attack. We must preserve and protect our democracy, when they are quite literally subverting democracy by trying to have a single elected official, the Secretary of State, unilaterally, without any adjudication, without any conviction, without any reason or justification or authority, remove a candidate for president from the ballot just because the left doesn't like that candidate. There is only one way to stop this. We're going to talk about that in just a second. First, I want to talk to you about EXPRESSVPN. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know how tech companies enrich themselves? By taking your personal data. That's right, they grab your web history, they grab your email metadata and video searches too to create a detailed profile on you, and then they sell that off to the highest bidder. Companies aren't just selling products anymore, they're selling you. You have become the product. So to protect your identity and your data from these tech giants, I highly recommend using EXPRESSVPN every time you go online. Think about all the websites that you visit, Facebook, Google. Everything you do and say online is tracked by these giant corporations. Using your public IP address, they can uniquely match your activity and even know your location. EXPRESSVPN makes you anonymous online by camouflaging your IP address and replacing it with a different, secure IP of your choice. EXPRESSVPN also encrypts all of your data so that it's protected from hackers and anyone else who's trying to spy on you. And what I like most about EXPRESSVPN is how easy it is to use. You do not have to be tech savvy. Just download the app on your phone or your computer, you tap one button, and voila, you are protected. So if you're like me and you believe your internet data belongs to you and not to big tech, then EXPRESSVPN is your answer. Protect your data with the #1 rated VPN provider today, expressvpn.com/Liz, and you can get 3 months free on a 1-year package. That's expressvpn.com/Liz, expressvpn.com/Liz. So there's really only one way for the Republican Party to put a stop to this effort by the left to use individual secretaries of state to remove Trump from the ballot. And when I say there's one way, it's important that you and I, as educated conservatives, as patriots, are able to verbally debunk what the left is trying to do. We're able to say you're wrong here and here and here, and that's why. But we must understand that this is one of those moments that it's not enough for us to simply be personally educated and agree with one another, that we have to use the just authority of the government in this case to protect our election system. And the reason that I say the just authority of government is there's been this idea that caught hold in the Republican Party probably for the last 50 years that limited government is the same thing as small government, and that the only kind of moral government is as small of a government as possible. And that's not always true. Now, I'm not sitting here advocating for big government, don't misunderstand me, but limited government doesn't mean as limited in use as possible. It just means limited by enumerated powers and accountable to we the people. So there are times when government has authority and that authority is just and we should use it. But Republicans, because we do want a limited government, we don't want a big brother peering over our shoulder. We don't want a bloated welfare state. We don't want spending. We conflate an extremely tiny government with that being the right way for our government to operate. And we forget that the left uses government to enact their agenda. And sometimes the right is absolutely morally justified in doing the same, that it shouldn't be our first inclination to use other means outside the government, meaning popular opinion or culture. Those don't have to be always our first line of defense. Sometimes our first line of defense should be using the just power of government, and this is one of those cases. The only way to stop this assault is not just for us to take individual action, but it's for Republican secretaries of state to remove Democrats from the ballot who supported BLM riots, who supported assault on police. If that isn't an insurrection and rebellion against the United States government, then I don't know what it is. Republicans have to be based. They have to be savage. We have to acknowledge the reality of the political enemy that we're facing, and we have to gauge our actions accordingly. It doesn't mean that we stoop to the level of doing bad things just as a tit for tat, just because that's what the Democrats are doing. But it does mean that our tactics have to be as serious as theirs, as effective as theirs. And if they're going to try to do this to us, then they have to get a taste of their own medicine. Because otherwise, what's going to happen is the same sort of thing that happened to us before the 2020 election. We, as Republicans, in the lead up to the 2020 election, as the Democrats were codifying universal mail-in ballots and unattended drop boxes round the clock and all this ballot harvesting, we so rejected the idea of those things because we didn't want election season, we wanted election day. We so rejected the idea of that we didn't even compete because the Democrats had made those things a reality. And because we didn't want them to be a reality, we didn't use them to our best advantage. And so the Democrats used them entirely, and Republicans lost as a result. That's what's going to happen in this case. We may not want to have to be this savage or this base, but the fact of the matter is, if we don't fight fire with fire, then the left is simply going to set us all ablaze. So the only way for the Democrats to stop doing this is for them to realize that if they do it to us, we are going to do it to them. So Republican secretaries of state who actually have just cause, political candidates, elected officials who supported abolish the police and assaults on courthouses and Molotov cocktails being thrown at cop cars, billions of dollars in damages to private business because the Black Lives Matter protesters are Marxists who don't believe in private property. Any politician who supported that, well, didn't they engage in a rebellion? Didn't they engage in an insurrection? If we're using the definition of the left, they certainly did. And Republican secretaries of state ought to start issuing these kinds of warnings to put a stop to what Democrats are trying to do to President Trump. By the way, the Proud Boys have been sentenced. Members of the Proud Boys organization have been sentenced for their role in January 6th. And we are going to do a full breakdown of these sentences and the actions of the Proud Boys that begot these sentences. We are going to be talking to Julie Kelly later this week for a full breakdown. You do not want to miss that. I believe that will be dropping on Thursday. So make sure you're subscribed to the show. Make sure that you're subscribed at rumble.com/Liz Wheeler so that you can see that breakdown. It's nasty, nasty stuff. To call it unjust would be the understatement of the year. And it's no coincidence, no accident that the Biden administration is doing this to the Proud Boys because many of them are unsavory characters who said stupid things. I don't want to defend the Proud Boys because I don't want to be associated with the things that they say. But that's what the left does. They target the people who they think conservatives and Republicans won't defend so that they can get away with setting the precedent of attacking the free speech of these individuals. So we're going to do a full breakdown on what happened, what crimes were actually committed, what the sentences were, what the corruption of the judges were, and what the implications of these sentences are going to be for you and for me later on this week. Make sure that you're subscribed at rumble.com/Liz Wheeler. We have time for one more random thing from the internet. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. I know a lot of Gen Zers watch this show, so this is how we view you. We millennials and even boomers view you and your slang. This is a skit about Gen Zers breaking up using all the slang that Gen Zers use. Take a look.
Sup, dude?
Bro.
Bro?
Don't bro me, bruh.
Bae, I'm not broing you, bruh.
Where were you last night?
I was with fam.
Fam or bae?
Fam. You need to spill the tea.
I slid into your DMs last night.
Damn, Gina. You know I'm woke now.
You're not woke. You're asleep.
Dead ass.
Who's Rebecca?
She's my work wife.
You stan her?
No.
Do you stan her?
I stand no one. I ship us.
You don't ship us. Did she ship you?
She tried, but I swerved.
Show me the receipts.
Why are you gagging?
Show me the receipts.
Can I email?
Text them.
WhatsApp.
Google Drive.
Fine.
I'm low-key done with us.
You're being basic as
Was that shade?
My bad.
You're just too thirsty for me.
I'm high-key not even thirsty.
Yeah, you are. You're like a thirst trap.
No, I'm not. I'm dry. I'm dry as I'm like a desert.
What does that even mean?
So that's it? You're just gonna ghost?
I am a ghost. I'm literally a ghost. I'm like Casper the Friendly Ghost, except I'm not. I'm Casper the Salty Ghost.
But what about us? We were goat. So I guess this is it.
Keep it 100.
All right, here's my challenge to every millennial, Gen X, and boomer. You got to tell me how many of those slang terms you knew and how many just go way over your head. I knew I think probably 75 or 80%, but I'm at an advantage here because my youngest sister is 20 years old and in college. So at least I'm exposed to it on some level. Yes, and those Gen Zers who are watching, that is what you sound like to us. So, all right, that's a hilarious one. Guys, thanks for watching today. Thanks for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button below, and ring the bell to make sure you never miss a video.